I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, and I would also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and future. I hope you all are having a good day so far, and it gets better. I'm your host, V, and joining me today is Victoria Jones from the School of GRS. Victoria, would you like to tell about yourself a little bit before you begin with your talk? Just your professional summary, that would be great.
Absolutely, thanks, Faye. I just want to begin also by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land and to pay my respects to elders past, present and future. A bit about me. So I've been with Western Sydney University for 5 years. Just recently had my 5th anniversary. I'm the school manager of the GRS, which essentially means I oversee policy, process and operation of the graduate research school as far as it pertains to the administrative side of the school. Previous to that, this is my first entry into the university sector. Previous to that, I spent 15 years working in community services as an implementation and an operations manager and an executive officer, predominantly around child and child wellbeing. I worked a lot in the child protection field, dealing with vulnerable families and their children, and more than likely predominantly mostly younger children under the age of 5, where they had issues in regards to that. And before that, I actually worked for an organisation by the name of NCOS, which was the New South Wales Council of Social Services, which was a peak organisation who dealt with policy issues with the New South Wales government around community service or social services, so disability, children's services, drug and alcohol youth services, and I had a corporate services role there. So that's been the majority of my working life. I did have a dalliance into finance, but I don't like to tell too many people about that. So yeah, that's been the sum of my role. Most of my previous life in community services has set me up for working with Western Sydney, and one of the reasons I wanted to transition was because what became really evident to me in working in community services is how important education is and how important research is. A lot of the work I did around child wellbeing was underpinned by rigid research and discipline around child attachment, child wellbeing, and it seemed a natural observation because a lot of the issues that our vulnerable communities face, and if you are to break into generational cycles of disadvantage, it comes through education. So I felt really, really fortunate to come to Western Sydney. So yeah, it's a bit about me.
Yeah, quite interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, that's all right.
So 106. I think we can begin with the presentation. Your talk.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to start by talking a little bit about what is a graduate research school and how does it differ from perhaps who your discipline school is, or perhaps you're actually enrolled in a research institute. So the graduate research school is made up almost of 2 parts. It is a school, it does have an academic face, and it does deliver academic program, but its predominant purpose is to support the development of higher degree research candidates. So we use the term HDR, and I'm sure you guys do all the time, but our main purpose and our main goal is to support you. So the academic programs that we run are run very much in mind with providing candidates with the skill and the opportunity, or skill and the knowledge to actually undertake their research. So many of you would have heard of the Master of Research, which has only been around at Western Sydney since 2015. So it's not a very old course, and we are one of 3 other institutions in New South Wales that offer what's known as the MRes, and it is the training ground in order to go on and undertake a PhD. But what we've found has become more evident as we deliver that program is that it has become a true research training platform for people who just do the MRes full stop and then go on and seek employment. The greatest success about it is it teaches you robustly enough how to actually undertake research methodology, your writing of a thesis, your analysis and data collection, enough to actually be able to secure employment just based on that particular program alone. But if you do want to go on to do a PhD, the students who have actually undertaken an MRes and then gone on have found themselves in a position where they're actually achieving their confirmation of candidature or even completion at a faster rate than those that haven't. So that's by and large the largest core academic program that the Graduate Research School deliver. And we don't deliver it in isolation, as many of you are aware. We deliver the core units, and then the electives are actually delivered by your discipline school or institute. And then the thesis year, obviously, you're supported by a supervisor. And we have a touchstone with every other school and institute about what it looks like, how it works, and how it runs. The other program that we do actually offer is the GC Ready, or the Graduate Certificate in Research Engagement, Development and Innovation. And that's an 80 credit point graduate certificate that runs alongside your PhD. And the modules themselves are very much aligned to where you are within your PhD. So when you're doing your confirmation of candidature, there's actually a unit designed specifically to help you actually get the most out of your confirmation of candidature and actually achieve that outcome. There are units in there around internship, around entrepreneurial leadership. It's all about how to fit your PhD, how to get to where you need to get within the milestones, but it also feeds in to future career ambitions or goals. So that's actually also offered. That's a much newer course. It's only been around since late 2018, so it's only about a year and a bit old. And you have to do a PhD to do it. It's not a general course offering. You need to undertake a PhD with Western Sydney, and we send you an invite if you wish to become part of that. And on top of that, we also, a lot of the core units within the MRes are now delivered to other master coursework programs as well. And we also touch with the institutes around developing academic units. So from an academic standpoint, we're quite small. We don't have a huge undergrad course listing or masters of a course listing. We're very, very small. But then you need to remember that our focus on research training skills is very much around supporting you do that, but we only do that through 2 accredited programs, and then the rest of it is delivered via the HDR workshops. So we run a series of workshops throughout the year. Some of them, as an example, are around working around your CSE. Some of them are around statistical methodology. There are various degrees about how to actually write grants, or various courses to how to write grants, and all of those are actually coordinated via the Graduate Research School on an annualised calendar and available on the website for you to have a look at. And we're welcome to absolutely open to suggestions about what you may want to do, or if there's any other courses that we don't offer that you'd like to see offer. We also have an academic literacy officer. She's incredibly busy. Some of you may know her. Her name is Dr. Susan Melbury, and she works with HDR students exclusively to assist them in their academic literacy. She runs, as an example, Saturday workshops, individual one-on-one consultations, as well as small writing groups in order to support not only you writing, but you writing with support of your colleagues and then support of Susan. She comes into her forward generally just as you're about to submit. A lot of people, as you can imagine, are highly stressed after 3.5 or 4 years of devoting themselves to a topic that they're incredibly passionate about. And then they're at that final hurdle. And for some students, it's so overwhelming. So she provides that level of support as far as academic literacy. And if you check, she should send out views notifications to all HDRs. I see her do it at least once or twice a week. And she started what's called the 24/7 writing workshop, where students at any stage of the day can actually log on to this and support each other and basically just sit and write, but knowing someone's actually there with you, which under COVID is a really great thing. So that's That's the academic side. And one of the simplest ways that you can see the difference in what we do, every school has what's known as an academic committee, where we work to look at the programs we deliver, what needs to be improved, review grades, do all that sort of stuff. Now, academic committees in most schools are made up only of academics within their school. Ours is actually made up of a cross-section of every single school and institute feeding into us and telling us what we could do to be better. We've thought about introducing this unit. So that's the academic side. The other side of the GRS is around the administrative support. So the GRS is tasked with actually providing administrative support throughout the student life cycle to all HDR candidates. The only part that we don't have an absolute touchstone on is the graduation part. Everything else we have at least our fingers in the pie of every single other part of it. So from inquiry through to admission applications, assessment, forwarding those assessments onto the school for approval, generating offers, working around enrolments, dealing with variations of candidature, which take predominantly a really large part of our time because, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, but variations are quite big. Supporting you to actually get through your milestones, and then obviously your examination process, which is considerably different to every other examination process. And then finally, obviously, once the examinations are received, it then goes up to a subcommittee of Senate, and we actually work with that subcommittee. They're our subcommittee, and then that's where you finally get your approval. And then we send all your details off to grads, and they work on the graduation and the course completion. We're a small school. We only have 12 staff in total. A lot of people are really shocked. They come into the GRS and they think that we're really big, but we're not. We've only got 12 staff, and I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those are academic staff, and then the rest are all administrative staff who work, or professional staff who work to support you in your candidature and also your inquiries and how that works. I could talk for hours about it, but I suppose I think the 3 things that I've noticed over COVID that are really, really important, and V, tell me if you want me to stop and answer some questions because I could talk for the whole hour, but the 3 things that I think are really, really important are scholarships and fees and tuition fees. I also think that extensions and leave of absences are something that has hit a lot of HDRs really quite hard. So I just want to touch on those 2 things if I can. And I'm going to start with the whole fee and scholarship thing. So Western Sydney University, like every other university, offers scholarships to HDR. And our scholarships are generally pinned at around $30,000 per annum. And in order to receive a scholarship, as denoted by the government and by regulations, they have to be awarded on a competitive basis. We can't award a scholarship on anything but a competitive basis. So, and very much like other universities, we've split that into 2 functions. One is around the releases, which is what people generally understand scholarship rounds or releases or the availability to a scholarship to be. And the other one is around a specific project-based scholarship. Since I joined Western Sydney, the actual number of project-based scholarships have grown exponentially. When I started, I think we offered around 20. We now offer in excess of about 130 a year. And what they are scholarships where an academic at Western Sydney, and for those of you already enrolled, will be predominantly your supervisor if you've got one of those, has secured money from either a grant, an industry partner, sometimes both, sometimes a grant and an industry partner, and they've submitted an application and that application has been successful, that grant's been successful, and they've secured money to research a specific topic or a specific research question. And as part of that, they've actually denoted that in this grant that they want 1 or 2 or 3 scholarships. Once they've actually done that, they then hand that over to us and we advertise for an applicant, and then it feels like you're actually applying for a job because it looks like that. There's selection criteria in there. You need to provide evidence of your academic performance. You need to provide how that's contributed to the topic and what you want to do for the topic. And quite often you also need to provide a research proposal as well. So you do all of that, and then ideally the school should hold interviews and actually go through all the applicants and go, I want to interview this person, they interview, and then they come back to us and that person is selected. And quite often there is additional reporting requirements because it is grant or industry funded. So West has an obligation back to them to let them know how we've spent their money, what we're doing to achieve the outcome that we said that we would, etc. So they've grown exponentially, and there's no view that they're going to quieten. They're going to be a force across all universities, and something worthy to be involved in or to look at, because if they're industry funded, it also means there's industry connection, which is really, really great as well. So that's good for you, for your future employment as well. The other part, the releases, have quietened down a little bit in the last couple of years, and to be honest, you won't see them come back into play at a significant rate until 2022, and that's as a result of COVID. They are open to everyone. So everyone, whether you're an Australian citizen, whether you're an international student, it doesn't matter, they're open. And what you're physically doing is competing with your colleagues to secure a place. And they're hard to get, they're really hard to get. You need to literally come with an academic resume that allows you eligibility into a PhD. So that means you would have had to have devoted some of your time towards actually doing some level of research skills and training already. And I will also let you know that the successful applicants are those that have published. Excuse me, I just need water. Ideally, one publication, or you've spent time doing research assistant work or doing work within industry or doing work within your own work around research. That's what's really, really important. So, and the way that they actually work, just so you've got a good understanding of the process, is every single application we get, and when we run a full release, we generally get in excess of around 260 up to 300 applications. And we assess every single application and we rank them according to a metric. And that metric is available on our website as well. And then after we've actually done that, we send it forward to the schools, and the schools rank them. And then we send that off to a committee, a subcommittee of the Research Studies Committee, who actually sit down, both sets of scores, all the documentation, and actually rank every single applicant out of those 300. And then given how many we've got to award, they're the people that actually get the scholarships. For many of you who are actually enrolled right now, who are in a scholarship and who have been impacted by COVID, you're most probably thinking, what am I going to do if my scholarship runs out and the employment's not so great and I've got a year left and my scholarship runs out at 3 years and I've still got a year left to actually finish my research? So, because as many of you know, your research is generally up to 4 years is when we support students, and we try and see if we can get students to complete in around 3.5. So there in comes the whole concept around a scholarship extension. So just to let you know, scholarship extensions, don't ask for them until you're at least 6 or 7 months out from the end of your scholarship. They won't be considered at that point. You need to actually be almost 6 to 7 months out at the end date of your scholarship, and then I recommend you speak with your principal supervisor and or your associate dean of your individual school, associate dean of research and HDR. Every school has one. Every school, the institutes have HDR directors, the schools have associate deans, research and HDR. And you speak to your principal supervisor and to your associate dean or HDR director and see if it's possible to get an extension. You may not get the full 6-month extension, but you might get a 3-month extension, and it's worth investigating that. I would never tell any student not to seek it, but the justification behind it is quite significant. You need to prove either why you need that extension beyond your personal implications. It's not to say that personal implications are not important, because they absolutely are, but they're awarded on the level of why your research has been interrupted or disrupted, or what is it about your research that will benefit from a further 6 months of concentrated effort where the scholarship would support you to do that. So that's where that's at. At the moment, because of COVID, they're all about research disruption. If you send through an application that doesn't reference or detail what the disruption has been to your research, generally they'll send it straight back and ask you to provide that, or they'll decline it. And even if you have detailed it, it's likely that they'll still come back and ask for more information. Don't feel that that's personal. It's just that there's a lot of people applying for a very small sum of money. So we're trying to make it really, really obvious and clear and make sure that it's there. But as I said, 3 months generally is what we're looking for. And then we'll work to sort of see if we can do another 3 months. And it's a moving feast. It's just that. For those of you who are on scholarship, who have your scholarship end at 3 years, but your candidature is 4, I urge you strongly to look at the terms and conditions document that was sent with your scholarship. That will detail for you if at any stage you've got a 3-year or a 4-year tuition fee waiver. Domestic students, and I know this is not going to seem fair to international students, but domestic students automatically get a 4-year, what's known as an Rtp Fee Offset, and that is provided by the Australian government. And it's not like it's not that the university is getting money. It's a fee offset, meaning that the university is subsidising your tuition fee. We're not physically putting the money aside, but under the regulations, we can allow for that. We can't allow for it beyond 4 years, except under COVID, and this is something that was just brought in. So any student that was enrolled as of the 31st of March 2020, who is a domestic student, has an Rtp fees offset, we can now legitimately extend that to 4.5 years. Up until, I think it's March 2022. So we can't go beyond that. So at the end of March 2022, that's it. So even if you were enrolled and all that sort of stuff, it's not going to impact. So the government's very clearly defined what we can do and what we can't do with that. If you're an international student, the government and the legislation, it's called HESA, or Higher Education Standard legislation, you can look it up, basically says that we cannot offer a tuition fee waiver or an Rtp fee offset where there is no scholarship in there. As much as we dearly love to, we actually can't. So if you've got a 3-year scholarship, we can give you a 3-year, what's known as a fee waiver. If you get an extension for 3 months, we can extend that fee waiver for 3 months. But if you don't, then you convert to a full fee paying student, which we absolutely understand. HDR fees are not cheap. They're not cheap. But ideally, we can't break that law, and so we're bound by doing that. If students are struggling with their fees and they need some help and some support, I know Western Success, and I know the university has put in place the ability to help international and domestic students who are struggling financially. But I also know that perhaps that level of support's not as enormous as paying $13,000 worth of fees, which I completely get. But reach out to the GRS, either to myself or to the Candidature liaison team, and which you can generally get through GRS enrolments. And we will work through where you're at and if there's anything we can do. We're big on providing payment plans at the moment. So rather than having to pay the full $13,000 before census date and looking at what you can and what you can't afford, we can actually try and break that down into manageable payments. We can reach out to student welfare, who actually have, if you type in student welfare on the website, you'll actually see like counselling, disability services, but they do offer financial, not support, but financial counselling as well. So that might help you. And that's where that sits for that one in particular. For domestic students who are overtime, so if their 4.5 years is up and they still haven't submitted, then essentially they become what's known as overtime paying fee students. And so there is a fee associated with that. And again, if it's too much to pay all at once, we can look to introduce a payment plan as well. And domestic, for overtime domestic full fee paying students can access fee help as well if they need that support. So that's all about the money, and I'll take specific questions in regards to that. In regards to the extensions and the leave of absences, the rule of thumb is quite clear. So the policy says that you can take up to 12 months for both. 12 months worth of extensions throughout your candidature or 12 months worth of a leave of absence within your candidature. The difference between the two, extensions are about research disruption, and leave of absences are about personal circumstances. Again, it's not like the two don't intertwine like everything in life. Of course they do. But predominantly the reason for an extension has to be around, I had trouble completing my experiments. It might be COVID related, it might not be. A piece of equipment might have failed. You might have not had access to the group of people you wanted to interview. They might, like, I know for an instance, the bushfire affected one HDR student where they were going to do a whole bunch of interviews, and these people were in a really highly affected bushfire area. So even before COVID hit, they were actually disrupted in their research. You may find that your supervisor just has, you know, an ADP or a long service leave or something along those lines. And essentially they took just a little while to organise your panel, which should never happen. If you're facing that, reach out to the GRS because we can help you get that sorted. And that might have impacted you for a month where you felt like you weren't supported enough at that particular point in time. You can also raise that. But my big thing to you there, if you are facing that scenario, come to us because we can push the schools to make sure that they provide you with what's needed in that regard. Don't wait until it's too late. Come to us early. So that's the rule of thumb. In an extension or a leave of absence, you don't have to take 12 months at once. You don't even have to take a full 6 months at once. You can take 3 months if you want, and then another 3, depending on what's happening for you or what your circumstances are. Same with the leave of absences. You might find that, you know, you're just maybe not coping right now, or you've got personal circumstances or family circumstances and you just need a bit of a break. Then you might want to take like 2 months or 3 months or 6 months, depends on your personal circumstance. The person who's in the best position to guide you about how long you should take so you're still able to complete your PhD is your principal supervisor. They're the ones that are going to sit down and look at you, your research and your personal circumstances and go, at this point, if you take 6 months off, you're okay. When you come back, we'll do this, this and this and this, and they'll help you formulate a plan. And for every extension and leave of absence, we're requesting an updated candidature plan at the moment that needs to be submitted and is put on your file as well. So they're the 2 points. I can see that there's questions, I think. So maybe rather than me rabbiting on, I might take some questions because we have half an hour left. So I'm happy to take some.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you, Victoria. That was great. So the first question is, what will happen if a PhD candidate ends up deciding not to pursue the degree anymore due to some specific reason? What will GRS do about it if it is a personal choice?
So without the follow-up, so what we're saying is that you've decided not to continue your higher degree research program to date, and you've decided to actually leave the program. And I hope I'm answering that correctly, and maybe we can ask a few more questions or actually tell me if I'm on the right road there. So what happens is, at any stage, anyone can decide You know, I've decided I don't want to continue with my PhD. It was a great idea, but something in my life just isn't right now. And that happens for students. They reach a stage where they're just going, it's just not the right thing to do. So the best thing for you to do, I think, is you need to advise your principal supervisor and that's what you want to do. And generally, if you're in a school, you're Associate Dean Research and HDR or your HDR Director as well, it's good to let them know. It's also good to let them know if you're comfortable, if you want to disclose why you want to finish your program. What will happen at that stage is the GRS will issue you a letter which actually details exactly what you've done to date as far as consumed EFSOR, what course you were enrolled in, all that sort of stuff. What I recommend you also do is obviously take your own work, your own progression plan, and any APRs or COCs and stuff like that. Take that with you, so you've got a record of what you've done. Because a lot of people come back. For every 2 students that might leave, and the number of people that leave their HDR degree is very small. When you look at undergrad courses or postgrad coursework courses, they're a lot higher. Generally, we have no more than about between 5 and 10 people leave in a year, and that's currently now, and that's with COVID. Before that, it used to be somewhere around 4. Because you guys have the leave of absence and because you have the ability to take a break, so a lot of people opt for that in the first instance. So if you're uncertain about whether that's the right thing to do, you can reach out to the GRS and we can help you work through whether that is the right instance. So that letter becomes, if you like, your statement that you've actually maybe done half of a PhD. Now, if you choose to come back to Western Sydney, that's great. We've got everything on file. And you need to reapply basically based on the premise of what you've done. What will be looked at in that instance is how valid your research is, depending on how long you've taken. So some people go away for a year or a year and a half, and then they come back and they want to finish it. And in that time, they look at how the research in that particular area has progressed. And so they need to maybe amend their PhD a little bit, and then they move forward.
Can I ask what happens with the scholarship? Let's say somebody has a scholarship and they've done the first year,
yeah,
and then they do decide to leave. Is there any financial ramifications of that?
We'll never ask anyone to repay a scholarship if they leave that way. That's a given. So you're not asked to repay. We of course stop your scholarship if you stop studying. And some people have asked us, if I choose to leave Western Sydney and I decide to go, let's say, to Griffith University or another university, will my scholarship follow me? And the answer to that is no. And no university does that at the moment. It used to be a thing back about 10, even 15 years ago, where the scholarship would follow you. That no longer occurs. So just to make it really clear, your scholarship won't follow you. But there's no penalty per se. We're not going to ask for any money to be returned. It's just simply, thanks a lot, we wish you well, here's documentation, and you know, if you choose to come back, then this is what we'll do when we look at it. You will always need to pay your SAF fees. Don't not pay your SAF fees, because if you do choose to come back and you owe $150 in SAF fees, no one's going to let you in unless they're paid. So even if you are choosing to leave, you should actually try and clear that particular debt. But that's about it, really. That's as much as we can offer.
And what is the price of the graduate certificate you mentioned for PhD candidates?
I'm going to cough. Give me 2 seconds while I'm mute. Okay. There is no cost, which is a nice thing for you. The graduate certificate has been structured in a way that there's no additional cost to you, whether you're domestic or international. The cost of that is being absorbed into the PhD. So that's a nice thing. That's a nice thing to tell people for once. Okay, any other questions that I can see?
V, you're silent.
So the next question is, This person has recently sent their documents for a scholarship extension for signing to their HDR director and the dean. So how can they find out if their documents have reached the GRS?
Okay, you can send us a quick email if you want, and that's to grs.scholarships@westernsydney.edu. When you go into the Graduate Research website, under contacts, you'll see, and we have myriad of email shared accounts, and with the detail of what those accounts for. So scholarships are around scholarships, admissions are around admissions, pretty stock standard. Exams are around exams, student fees are around student fees. Just send an inquiry through to scholarships and say, look, I've put in a submission, has that reached you? If it didn't, if it hasn't reached the GRS and you want to know where it's at and you ask us, can you follow that up? We'll send a quick email off to the AD and say, look, we've been told, you know, is this progressing or isn't it? And then we'll encourage them to reach out to you to see where it's at and provide you with advice or support. So that's that one.
Excellent. And one of them is, someone says, Victoria, sorry, I did not completely understand about the RTP fee offset. For my offer of admission, it is written that I have 4 years candidature duration, which means that the scholarship is for 3 years and the fee offset is for 4 years. Will I still have 4 years of candidature duration? If something changed in those conditions, why are we not notified personally?
Okay. Firstly, let me start answering that question. You're not alone to be confused about the RTP fee offset. Literally every single person I speak to is confused about how that works and the way that that works. So in the example you just gave me, you've got a 3-year scholarship, which is great, and you've got a 4-year RTP fee offset, which is also really great as well. So the 4-year RTP fee offset is equivalent to you not paying fees for 4 years. So you won't have any fees to pay for those 4 years, but your scholarship will only go to 3 years. Simple. 3-year scholarship, 4-year fee waiver. Now under COVID, that RTP fee offset has been extended to 4.5 for those people that have that. And that should be listed in your terms and conditions. And well, not the 4.5 won't, but it is advertised on the website. So it has been sent out and it is under the frequently asked questions. So that's where that part is. Once you reach 4.5 years, if you haven't submitted in the 4.5 years, then as a domestic student, you may be liable for overtime fees. In fact, you most very will. If the person I'm speaking to is an international student, what that means is 3 years scholarship, 3 years fee waiver, and check on your terms and conditions. If you reach the 3 years, and you will then be liable for full fee overtime, full fee tuition fees, full tuition fees from the end of the 3rd year to however long it takes you to submit. So that's clear. I hope that answers that question. What was the second part? Why? Sorry, I didn't hear the second part to that, Manny.
You're muted, Maddie.
So that is saying, the second part was, will I still have 4 years of candidature duration?
Yes.
Which you've answered yes. And if something changed in those conditions, why are we not notified personally?
Those conditions haven't changed their stock standard. The only change that's happened recently is under COVID, and that was the extension to 4.5. And as I said, that's actually, it's been communicated via all the comms that have gone out from Matt, our wonderful Matt in the GRS. He sent everything out, and it is a frequently asked question, so that there is that component. But we wouldn't be updating terms and conditions. We to be honest, we don't have the manpower at the moment to do that for the many hundreds of people that are on scholarship at the moment. Our time is better spent trying to answer individual requests and deal with extensions and do all that sort of stuff right now. So I hope that answers that.
Thanks, that was good. So the next question is there a timeline for the release of scholarship funds for funded PhD candidates?
Is there a timeline? Yeah.
Who are stuck overseas after they have submitted their paperwork, noting their start date signed by their advisor and their HDR director?
Okay, so what I'm assuming is that I'm talking about an international student who's about to commence, but they're currently offshore. And that's fine. We've got a process in place. So what happens, and many of you who are existing HCR students would know, or maybe you can remember, when you started, maybe yesterday, maybe many years ago, you actually had to complete what was known as a research commencement date form. I know it sounds really silly, but it's a really important form. It is the single form that kicks off your candidature. So you maybe made an offer in February, and we may have said to you, your start date is in April, but the date that you negotiate with your principal supervisor is the date that your candidature starts, and that's what's in that form. Because HDR don't have intake. We don't have intake periods. Students can start whenever they want. So they need to negotiate that with their principal supervisor. Now, the date that the research commencement date form states is generally the same date that your scholarship will start, and it will run for that period of 3 years. Except if you take like a leave, if you take a leave of absence, your scholarship actually stops. If you are pregnant and you do get what's known as maternity leave under your scholarship, so you do get a period of, I think it's 13 weeks of full fee paid scholarship. You can take anything up to 12 months off, but we do pay you, I think, 3 months or 3 and a bit months of scholarship. So that's where that fits. But that's the date that it starts. If you're currently overseas, that's not going to prohibit you from actually getting a scholarship. We have worked out a way to still pay you. It's not the best way, I'll be honest, but for a lot of international students who have just started, who were successful in receiving a scholarship, there was no real way of actually getting the money to them because they weren't on Australia, so they don't have an Australian bank account. So, but we have worked a way around that. So that's good, and that's gratifying for all newly international commencing candidates who've won or been awarded a scholarship.
Is it fine to change the mode of study, say from full-time to part-time? And if so, how do you go about it?
Yeah, absolutely, it's fine. Every candidate should be able to change. For international students, I would caution you around your visa conditions and what's required under those. And if you are an international student, reach out to us first before you do that. For domestic students, absolutely. We have a lot of students who start full-time, go to part-time, then maybe change back to full-time, depending on what's happened. There's a variation of candidature e-form you need to fill in. Again, if you go to the Western Sydney website, the GRS, you'll actually see an area that says forms, and there's one specifically for changing the mode of study. Click on that, takes you straight into an e-form, fill it out, and then it progresses through the approval ranks. And then once we get it, we actually apply it.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. So could you give us a bit more detail about the kind of circumstances eligible?
Yeah. For a leave of absence, absolutely. So we get everything. And when I say everything, I mean absolutely everything. So you might find that, and they're generally not great reasons, I'm going to be really honest. So you might, either you or a member of your family become ill, and you want to devote some time towards helping either yourself or caring for a family member. That is by and far the largest reason for a leave of absence. You might find if you're a young mother or a young father that you find that the requirements of childcare are maybe more than what you anticipated, so you may just want a slight leave of absence for that. You might find that work has become extraordinary for you. You might find yourself in a position where you're still working for a couple of days a week. And under COVID, you might find that your work, I know that COVID's a time of extremes. I know some people have lost all their employment, and some people are employed or working like ridiculous hours at the moment. And you might find that's the case for you. So your work requirements might play into that as well. Generally, they're personal. Anything that could possibly occur in your life that has a personal implication to you. So health, well-being, financial well-being, you might move house, you might relocate, you want a couple of months off. Anything along those sort of lines are generally what's considered personal circumstances. They are actually listed slightly in the doctorate policy, but they are much more better detailed or articulated on our website under the frequently asked questions.
So the next question is similar to another one that's also come through. So it says, if my commencement date is the 1st of April 2019, what is the maximum submission date of the candidature if it takes into account 4.5 years of RTA fees offset, which is similar to another one that's come in, which says, does this mean that I need to submit my thesis in 3 years if I do not have money to pay for university fees, following the previous question?
Okay, cool. Okay, so if your commencement date is the 1st of April 2019, your initial maximum submission date will be 4 years. So it will be literally around the 1st of April 2023. So that's literally 4 years. That's if you're full-time. If you're part-time, it's 8 years. And that's given the fact that you're starting fresh, you've taken no leave of absences, you've applied for no scholarship extensions or anything, the full 4 years stock standard. Now, into that will come leave of absences where we'll adjust that maximum submission date. And every time we adjust your maximum submission date, we will send you what's known as a ROC, which is a record of candidature. And that record of candidature has your maximum submission date. I do know currently there's no other way for you to see that. I have been told that under the new student management system that's coming out on the 10th of May next year, you will actually physically be able to see what your maximum submission date will be on the and do all those sort of things. So that's a really good thing. So that's how you know. So the 4.5 years of RTP still need to come with an extension. So you still need an extension form. We don't automatically extend candidature to 4.5 years, it's 4. But you do have the luxury now of the additional, if you like, 6 months without any fees. And if you're part-time, that does convert to a year, because part-time is like half of full-time, so that's the way that works. If a candidate has changed supervision project early on and had essentially had to restart the project in another team, I'm so sorry about that. That's a huge interruption. Are they eligible for a scholarship extension towards the end of it? I would actually say yes, you should apply based on that premise, because it feels like you've most probably lost a little bit of time in the beginning while you reorganised or reorientated your research. And that should be really clearly documented in all your documentation. So in every, in your first annual progress report, you should have written a new candidature plan, so it should be in there. And I know that many of you would have done a research contingency plan at this stage. It should have actually even been mentioned in that, that you've had to reshift and rechanged early on, because what happens early on affects what happens 3 years, 3.5 and 4 years down the track. So yes, you absolutely should do that.
Can I ask a question as well? How does, let's say you have issues with your supervisor, how can the GRS assist you with that?
Okay, so, excuse me, I'm not going to say that no one has issues with their supervisor, of course they do. What you can do is you can reach out to the GRS. There's a wonderful woman by the name of Anne Hearn who works in the GRS, and she predominantly deals with all student matters. If she's not available, I'm available. And you can give us a call, and that call can be confidential, or you can arrange for us to Zoom at the moment, if that's better for you. And it's a confidential discussion about what you're facing with your supervisor and what we can do and how we can assist you with that. And everything is done with your consent. We don't do anything without your consent. But if we do have your consent, we might mediate for you with the associate dean of that school and try and see if it's something that we need to look at getting you a new supervision panel, or to see if we can mediate between the relationship of you and your supervisor. We actually Anne spends a fair amount of time of her working life to helping students who are facing that circumstance.
Wonderful.
So it's that.
And I think the last question is, so regarding, does this mean that I need to submit my thesis in 3 years if I do not have money to pay university fees?
Yeah, you're an international student. The first thing I'm going to get you to do is go check your terms and conditions, because you need to check that. It's really clearly stated on the first page about whether your scholarship and your fee waiver are 3 years or 4 years, well, what the difference is. If you find that they're both 3 years, which they should be, then yes, you're right. You would need to actually click in when you get to the 3-year mark. You convert to a full fee paying student. What you can do at that stage is ask for a scholarship extension, which again will extend not only the support we send to you, but also the fee waiver associated with that. And it is in the terms and conditions of your scholarship. So you do need to read those documents really carefully. Okay, no more questions?
So if
Fee offset 4 years. Generally, yes. Generally, 9 times out of 10, the RTP fee offset is 4 years and the scholarship is 3. Generally. But again, check your terms and conditions. And if you want to reach out to me personally, that's fine. My email address is victoria.jones@westernsydney.edu.au, or reach out to the GRS scholarship team and we can actually help you get through and understand exactly what that means for you. So we're more than happy to do that. Is there a portal? I wish there were. There's no portal for forms and things. Unfortunately, sometimes whilst this world lives in 2021, I feel like sometimes the university's IT area is not in that age, like it's 10 years behind. As I said before, there's a new student management system coming on the 10th of May next year. And hopefully once that system is introduced and once it's kicked off, we'll actually be able to provide all our forms on an e-form platform with a portal. Until then, a lot of them are paper-based, like we're talking printing, filling in and scanning and sending, which I deeply apologise for. It's not great, but it's what we've got at the moment. The only forms that run off an e-form are the variation of candidature, which is about changing supervisors, applying for a leave of absence, changing your study mode, that sort of type stuff, or your examination. So when you submit your thesis and when your examiners are nominated, that's also an e-form, but that's generated from within your school.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you,
That's
Victoria,
all
for
right.
joining us.
That's
Yeah, apologies for being late. My MBN has had such outages at the moment.
It's the weather.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Thanks for everyone for allowing me the opportunity. I know an hour is not very long. As I said, if you've got any questions at all, please make sure that you reach out to the generic email sites contained within the contacts page on the GRS site and just ask questions. That's what we're here for. I will let you know that the GRS or a portion of the GRS will be back on campus from the 30th of November. Not everyone's going to be in there because we're being obviously careful and mindful of the staff in the GRS. We're located in Kingswood, but we will be back. So therefore, our phones will actually work a lot better than what they are now. I know a lot of people struggle with that. And we will be allowing students to come and ask questions face-to-face again. It most probably will be not necessarily by appointment, but there'll be structured times on when you can come see us about what. So that will be helpful. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, Victoria.
All right, take care. Have a good day.
Yes, take care. So thank you everyone for joining us, and next time join us again where we discuss something SDR related as well. I actually forgot the name. Maddie, do you remember the name for the next one?
Oh, the next one I believe is the library. Let me just double check now. I can quickly flip that open. Give me one moment.
No, it's managing life through a postgrad.
Oh, is it? Yeah. So managing, sorry, that is mental health and well-being and whatnot, managing life through a postgrad. So we do have a couple of representatives coming from the mental health and well-being team, which will be very good to have on board because we do understand, being students ourselves, it is a tough time for everyone and people are it can get really hard to maintain our mental health, try to create that balance of postgrad, whether it's COVID or not. And we do have a lot of supports on campus, but even just for general knowledge and tips and understanding that you're not alone and the similar situations that other people face. One of the biggest issues is that a lot of people feel that others aren't going through what they're going through. So it is important to really, I guess, understand that you're not alone, and there is a lot of information out there to assist. Cool.
Wonderful. So yes, join you guys next time. Have a good day, everyone.
See you later, everyone. Bye.